Bullied. I grew up in a small, quiet town called Durham. Everybody knew each other, and there was a beautiful forest nearby which I lived, in a wooden cabin. I lived with my father. My mother died during labor. I have been forever pained with the guilt at that fact. At the beginning of my existence was the end of hers. Due to the circumstances, my father and I had a very close relationship. Ever since I could remember, I had never socialized with the children of my town, nor did I possess any desires to. I was shunned by the other children of my village. I have learned now that this was undoubtedly due to my familial situation. In that day and age, it was bizarre for a child to grow up with a single parent, let alone a single father. This was perhaps the reason my father and I lived in the forest rather than the village itself, partially secluded from this small society. I recall one situation in which I was approached by a boy of my age who snorted, "My mom says to stay away from you. She says your family ain't right." As a 6-year-old, I was perplexed by this statement and rather confused as to why he had said this and what he meant. I shrugged it off and continued to skim stones across the playground solitarily. When I was around the age of 7, a classmate of mine, Sarah Potts, went missing. All I can remember of Sarah is that her almost white, blonde hair, always plaited into long pigtails at her side of her head and adorned with bright satin ribbons, and she had bright blue eyes. She would often glance at me from her desk, whispering to her friends and giggling before her eyes rested on her pencil and paper. Although I was overly familiar with being frowned at, this was an extremely strange occurrence for our quaint, sleepy town. Neighbors spoke to each other on a daily basis. Any children playing out would be watched over immediately, and parents had no reason to worry about their children playing outside. That was until several days following Sarah's disappearance, when the frantic search parties had died down, and the town came to the morbid conclusion that in any hopes finding the girl would be futile. Communication between villagers broke down. Children were forbidden to play outside now, and a child wouldn't be seen without a parent by their side. Durham became a ghost town. I skipped down the darkening streets alone on my way home, triumphant as any child would be at the fact that I had now had the entire town to play in without facing the unusual torment I succumbed to from the other children. Creaking open the wooden door, I walked to the kitchen where my father was dishing up the evening meal. I began to salivate with anticipation and hunger. I hadn't eaten all day, again as the village children had stolen my lunch. "Sit down, darling," smiled father. I jumped onto a wonky wooden chair, licking my lips. They didn't find Sarah. I slurped through mouths of beef. "That poor child," murmured my father, his brow creasing with empathy. He took a bite of his own food and swallowed before adding, "Were you tormented by those wicked children today, my dear?" I shook my head, chewing. "Good. I suppose the whole town has grown quiet following the disappearance." He swallowed his glass of water in 3 small gulps, taking his dish and cutlery to one side before leaving the room. Sucking at a piece of gristle caught in my tooth unsuccessfully, I used my little fingers to pry it out. I looked at what lay in my small hand before me, a red snippet of ribbon and a strand of long blonde hair. I smiled and continued eating. Deeper darkness. There is a moment each leap year at exactly 3 past 3 on the morning of February 29th. If you possess the courage, await the moment in a darkened room with no other present. In that moment, the darkness will deepen. If you were to hold your hand directly before your face, you would not see a thing. But you must not do so. No, for that would be a waste of a moment. Instead, you must reach out into that impenetrable darkness, and it will reach out to you. An unseen hand will grasp yours. You must not flinch away, nor tighten your grasp. To do so will only slew away more of the discrepant flesh that covers it. It angers its unforeseen owner. Remain perfectly still as the withered fingers move over your palm, tracing unknown patterns. Do not move an inch as it crawls slowly up your arm. And most of all, do not breathe as it caresses your face, touching what cannot be seen. You should remain still through this. The hand will be withdrawn, and a voice will speak, so close you can feel its breath on your face. Smell the scent of decay it carries. It will ask you for one simple piece of information, your name. Answer truthfully, and the presence will retreat, leaving only a whisper in the air as the darkness lifts. It's done. From that day on, untold good fortune will be yours, and the mysterious power. You will lack nothing and have everything. But in a year, perhaps 2, you will feel your skin begin to decay, and the smell of the sweet, sweet death upon your breath. My mother thinks she's dead. My mother has been acting strange lately. After coming home from meeting with her friends, she's no longer being her bright, cheery self. She sits in her chair, crouched in a fetal position, with a deep sadness carved into her face. If she's ever walking, she's pacing slowly and shifting her weight from side to side. My dad, my sister, and I have been trying to help her get better, but nothing seems to help. We've been trying to get her to talk about whatever she's feeling, and all she says is she's dead. She never means dead inside, but literally dead. She's asking us how we don't know about that. We're telling her that she isn't dead and that she's right here. She keeps denying this and tries to inform us she's not supposed to be here. Mother has been making weird demands. That we find her body, give her a funeral, let her go, that kind of thing. She says she sees her skin decomposing and smells her decaying body in the forest. I keep asking her what she's talking about. She's referring to a night she came home late after meeting friends. We came home at around 11 p.m. and we assumed she lost track of time. The strange thing was that her car is nowhere to be found. We asked her if she walked home, and all she tells us is she died in a wreck. According to her, she slid off the road and her car tipped over. The impact killed her, she says. We've been trying to convince her that she's alive. She never lets us get close to her. If we try to touch her, she moves away. I managed to touch her shoulder briefly and felt an icy chill. I asked her if she needs a blanket, and she replies, "What's the point? I don't feel cold or anything. We took her to a local psychiatrist to tell us what could be wrong. According to the doctor, she may have been suffering from what's called Cotard's syndrome. What this implies is that Mother is under the delusion that she is deceased. All she told him was that she is deceased and trying to tell everybody. In the meantime, we've been looking for her car. We've concluded she was stranded on the side of the road and walked home and somehow forgot about it. We could not find her car anywhere between home and the bar. She replied, "You're looking in the wrong place. Nothing is helping." Then I got a call from the police. The police on the line said the car was found on the side of the road, tipped over. The person inside, who had been dead for days, fits my mother's description. They wanted someone to come to the morgue and identify the body. I was frozen with uncertainty. After hanging up, my mother walked up to me, and I felt a cold draft wafting through my body. "See you after the funeral," was the last thing she said before she evaporated in the thin, cold air. Why do people keep staring at my face? What the hell is her problem? I thought to myself as I sat in my cubicle. Angela, one of my coworkers, was staring at me. More accurately, she was gawping at me. My face. I wanted to scream at her, flip my desk over and demand just what the fuck her problem was. But I just kept my head down. You see, this had been happening ever since I got the job here. In fact, any time I got a new job, my coworkers would just end up staring at my face. It happened in public too. People in the street, on the hypertrain. Everywhere I went, people were always looking at me. I don't know why. When 5 p.m. rolled around, I gathered up my things and headed out. Even tonight was no different. Everyone I passed seemed to, at the very least, give me a sideways glance. It was intoxicating. Absolutely blind rage filtering into every electrical impulse in my body every time someone looked my way. I got home and decided to do a facial scan in my mirror. I locked eyes on my face, and using my internal scanning system, I searched the internet for pictures of millions of humans. My face seemed just as human as any one of those in my search. I decided it was probably best I just change my face and look for a new job again. Perhaps this time it would be different. Perhaps people would stop staring at my face. The next day, I traveled to a job interview. After I posted a resignation letter to my old place of work, nobody seemed to be looking at me. Not a single glance on the way out. Finally, I thought, even if it only lasted 1 week like the other times, it would be a sweet release from like a goldfish in a bowl. The interview went well, and I headed home with a skip in my step. When I was on the hyper train, though, there was this one guy who seemed to keep looking in my direction. No, he was looking at my face. I decided it was just one guy, right? You get weirdos on the train all the time. So I just tried to distract myself with the newspaper. I picked it up and looked through the headlines. Android units recalled after Sentry module error caused artificial paranoia, it read. I saw the logo of the company that made me in the picture below it. It shuddered. I hope they never find me out. I looked at the other headline. 4th victim of murder spree found. My eyes widened, and I read on. Another body of a young man has been found in the park this morning. The latest of the sequence of vicious attacks, much like the other bodies. He was found with his face removed, most surgically, and left for dead sometime late last night. I looked up from the newspaper. Why the hell was this guy still staring at my face. The blind man's favor. In Berlin, after World War II, money was short, supplies were tight, and it seemed like everyone was hungry. At that time, people were telling the tale of a young woman who saw a blind man picking his way through a crowd. The two started to talk. The man asked her for a favor. Could she deliver the letter to the address on the envelope? Well, it was on her way home, so she agreed. She started out to deliver the letter. When she turned around to see if there was anything else the blind man needed, she spotted hurrying her way through the crowd, without his smoked glasses or white cane. She went to the police, who raided the address on the envelope, where they found heaps of human flesh for sale. And what was in the envelope? It stated, "This is the last one I'm sending you today." My fear of water. I've always had a terrible fear of being submerged completely in water. Not that I can't swim or anything. My dad made me learn. He said I had almost drowned when I was really young. I was afraid of it because, for as long as I can remember, whenever I'm under the water and look up the surface, I see a woman reaching down to me with a warm smile and glowing golden hair with blue eyes. Even if it's just in the tub, it always happened. It was just normal for me, but I never got used to it. It was unnerving, but also soothing at the same time. She always made me feel like it was okay. I still avoided it though, because I was just a kid and it was really freaky. I never told my dad about it as a kid, but I did ask him about my mom. He never wanted to talk about her. Sometimes he even got mad at me for trying too hard to bring it up. It was only recently that I described this apparition to him. He nearly dove into the telephone pole. Obviously, he knew something. I asked him again about my mom. He still wouldn't say much, except that she died when I was very young, and that she loved me very much. He also admitted that her hair and eyes were those colors, just like mine. So I did some research on my own, looking up her name for myself on my birth certificate and trying to find references I could find. Any news clips about a boy nearly drowning, anything. I mostly wanted a picture, something I could match to my guardian angel. Today, buried in our town library, I found it. Winchester, Marie Withy, 29, drowned to death yesterday evening after climbing a razor wire fence and fleeing to a nearby reservoir. A funeral is scheduled by her family for the 25th. Marie was institutionalized just 6 months ago after being found not guilty of attempted murder on the grounds of insanity. Her husband Daniel Withy had acted quickly enough to rescue their infant child when she was found trying to drown him in a bathtub. Message from a friend. Hello there. It's funny how after all this time, I still don't know your name. But it doesn't even matter anyways, as long as I know you. Yeah, I know you seem confused right now. I know you enough to tell you this message will give you a reaction like that. But you shouldn't be. Well, at least not for long. You see, I was with you this whole time. I was right next to you for the last few days or so. I was watching you sleep. I heard you talk with your friends. And I know what you had for lunch today. You almost saw me quite a few times, but I had to hide from you a lot. You know, the last time when you felt someone behind you, and just as you turned around to look, no one was there? Well, there was. Only you didn't see me. As I was watching you, I realized that you were actually a good person, and I grew quite fond of you. And for the last few days, I was trying to find a way to talk to you. But I knew you would be afraid when you hear my voice, just like last time. Instead, I got a better idea. I saw you using the device a lot, this device. And I saw you like to visit a website like this. So I wrote this message to you, hoping you would read it one day. Now that you are reading it, I told you what I wanted to tell you. I think now you are prepared enough to see me. We can finally be friends. I will show you my face tonight.